Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th session of the 2018 Small Farms Winter Webinar Series, hosted by the University of Illinois Extension Local Food Systems and Small Farms team. This is Doug Gooker. I'm going to be moderating today. I'm filling in for Zach Grant. Someone has their phone on.
Is
And
it possible? Is it possible to everyone?
yes, there we are. Okay. Oh, so we appreciate you joining us again for these webinars, and we will do our best to begin and end within the space of the hour. It's a tight delivery period for our educators to deliver their programs, so please understand why we are limiting their questions to the text box at the left during the presentation. I will do my best to make sure that our presenters answer them as time allows and provide you with links if necessary. I've posted call-in information over in the chat box, and if I haven't, I'll do that shortly. If you continue to have audio or visual issues. This presentation is being recorded, and a link will be emailed to the presentation as soon as possible after the session is over. So if we run over time and you need to leave early, don't feel bad. You're going to receive an email with a link to the recorded webinar. There will also be a link for a very short online evaluation of this presentation, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback for future webinars and for additional personal research projects that we need to do. Now, this week's presentation is from Dr. James Theuri. He is one of our local food systems and small farms educators in Grundy, Kankakee, and Will counties. James has a diverse educational background with degrees in zoology, botany, crop protection, and his doctorate is in plant pathology. His specialty working here in Extension is in integrated pest management, but he also facilitates many other programs, including farm management, horticulture, livestock and horse maintenance, forage production, soil science, conventional and organic specialty crop production, and beekeeping. Today, however, James is going to share with us the key aspects of having a successful pastured poultry enterprise. With that, I will let James Theuri take over. Take it away, James.
Thank you so very much, Doug. First of all, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. And I also want to let the listeners know that I don't have a strong background in animal science. However, by hanging around livestock producers, I have learned quite a bit. And so I know enough to share with you. This will be a lot of basics of pastured poultry, and this will not be in any way prohibitive of you asking any and every question, because we do have specialists who I can use for anything else that I cannot answer in today's presentation. Somebody can't hear us, Doug, so get that done, taken care of. Are you recording as well, Doug?
Yes, I am. I was muted. Yes, I am, and
Okay.
I'm trying to get the other problem taken care of.
Thank you. So I will be moving over this presentation very fast, and there are some issues you may want to hear that I may not address at this point in time. There's not too much time, and there's just too much to cover anyway, but I'll hit the high points and we can go from there. So at the end of this presentation, I hope that you will have understood what pastured poultry is and why do people get into pastured poultry, and because different types of poultry, the guinea fowls, chickens and ducks and turkeys and all that can be raised on pasture, I will only be mostly referring to broilers. That's what is mostly raised by those who do pastured poultry. And then I'll touch on some aspects of management, nutrition, housing, and protection of those animals, livestock. And some data will be helpful in making my point. And then I'll be taking a risk and seeing if I can venture into answering the question of, can one make a profit in whatever investment, in however much investment they make and whatever marketing they get into. Over here, you see a picture on top right-hand side here showing, let me get one of these pointers here. Yeah, so this pastured poultry animal house, well, chicken housing. Later on, you hear me talking about day ranges, and as I continue, this is one of that kind of situation where the birds come home to roost in that structure that you're seeing over there, but they are allowed to roam. And it is the same thing being shown down there over here. This is Joe, and I don't know how to pronounce that word, Joe Salatin. He is the guru when it comes to aspects of pastured poultry production. So again, he is the man who started this movement going, and he is the one who goes around the country advising people. And people also visit his farm in Virginia, the Polyface Farms, and he advises people how to do it. He's also got a book, a publication. He's the man when it comes to pastured poultry. So in this country, all things or most of agricultural items in this country go with bigger being better because it's more efficient and it's more profitable. And so you end up in situations where animals are either in massive buildings as shown right here, or animals, oh, I keep saying animals, but chickens are animals too. That's livestock. So chickens can be caged in tight cubes where stretching their wings is also an issue. The idea being to just have them being productive. That's it. They are egg-laying machines, or they are meat-making animals, period. And the best way to make them is to cram them into however much space there is, and in the shortest time, try to get them out of there and make the big bucks. But with time, people have realized that locally produced food, humanely produced food that is produced with reference to chickens now, with chickens being allowed to be chickens, means much better food, tastier food, higher quality food. So I'm showing two pictures here of a large-scale farm and chickens that are roaming free. Okay, so so sometimes, and Joel Salatin will always show this, sometimes you can also have uncaged and free birds out there in the open in large numbers. He does do quite huge numbers out there. But backyard chicken raisers are now starting to do pastured poultry in their backyards, in uncaged situations and in pastured situations. And I also wanted to take a moment here to define what free range means. Free range, according to USDA, if you allow your chickens any amount of time, because they say an undetermined amount of time, free access to the outdoors, that is considered free range. Okay. Day range now would be referring to chickens that you allowed, like I showed in a previous picture there. They come into their housing for roosting or for escape from predators or for escape from bad weather, and then roam free in the pen that you have or in the yard that you've provided for them. You also have movable pens, and we'll see that in a little while, where you move the pen with the chickens in it around the compound. So they are contained, they are not free to roam as such, but they are able to access the pasture. And of course, pastured poultry is one that is thriving on pasture. That's simply what it means. And and I want to put this caveat there that they are not out on pasture to feed on the grass. They will nibble on the grass, no doubt about it. And I want to say that chickens are not like grazers. They cannot digest the grass. However, if you open up the stomach of a chicken, you'll find that the grass is kind of mashed a little bit because there's grit in there. So some of there's some extract that has been acquired by the chicken from the grass. So there are some vitamins and maybe some other nutrients from the grass. It's not what they are after on pasture. They are after bugs, mostly. That's what they're after, and the worms. So that, I hope, clarifies some of those terminologies there. So what are the benefits and purposes of pastured poultry? Like I said, consumers have a new interest in locally produced food, and they are interested in keeping backyard chickens. So some people are keeping them for food, their own consumption. But some people will also keep, in addition to that, they'll keep them for a little bit of extra income. Not a whole lot, but some income. Nothing wrong with doing that. And some people consider happy chickens to be producing higher quality meat. And happy here means stress-free, unstressed animals, generally, unstressed animals, including ourselves. When we are stress-free, we are happy and we produce better. So they are also simple livestock to raise. Anybody can raise a chicken. Show your chicken one of your abandoned suburban cars, whatever car that you have abandoned out there. Show it that it's home, and that's where it will be roosting every night. They will go out and forage and come back there faithfully every night. Beyond that, chickens, when they are free on the pasture, whichever way, they are going to enhance the fertility of that land. So from an environmental point of view, they will be good for the environment. And I hope you know that chicken manure is very high in nitrogen. It's a great fertilizer. You can also integrate chickens with other activities on the farm. We're dealing with small farmers these days, small farms. And if you're growing your vegetables and doing something else and something else, you can always add poultry into the enterprise because they are easy to keep. Then they are of better health themselves. Out there, it's been observed that chickens that are raised on pasture have better health than those that are caged or closed indoors most of their life. They are also good for us because out there, their meat has been analyzed and found to contain omega-3 fatty acids and more vitamins, stuff like that. And that's good for us. So it's good for everybody's health here. And then you can also do some value addition. If you end up processing the chickens yourself and go selling them in the farmer's market, you can up the price per pound. And so you can get better income that way. So overall, it's great to have pastured poultry in any enterprise. And you don't need much land, by the way, to have them on pasture. So before you start, and I guess everybody gets told this before they start any business, and we also know that farming is a business, you need to pick up a pencil and paper and write your personal goals. Do you want to raise them for just your own food? Do you want some extra income? Or do you want eventually to be your only source of income if that is possible? Are you after being a good environmental steward? What resources do you have? Most often, family labor is used for this kind of
where they are here.
For this kind of enterprise, and then you need some money. You need some cash to start your enterprise. What skills do you have? Visit with somebody else who is doing it. Listen to a whole lot of videos that are online. There are books out there that you can buy. Call extension personnel. Are you going to use existing structures? Your barn, the barn that you've not been using? Are you going to make your own chicken tractors? And we'll talk about chicken tractors in a little while. How are you going to start? By building your solid foundation, then your enterprise is the chances of succeeding are much higher. And then Joel Salatin, he says that 20% of the job is done on the farm, 80% of the other job is marketing. And yeah, marketing, you cannot take it for granted. You have to do your homework before you start. Otherwise, you could end up with produce or livestock that you don't know what to do with. So explore the markets. What competition exists? Are there any gaps in supply? What about regulations? What kind of regulations are in your state or in your county? You should always check that out. Where do you sell them? Who is going to be your buyers? Some people get by just with selling in niche markets or just word of mouth and people coming to their farm and getting these chickens. So others go digitally, you go on Facebook and say you have this much of chickens to sell, and people will come for them. Farmers markets are a great place. Okay, but always start small, scale up. So some basic questions, and these have been asked of some extension personnel, and they try to answer the questions. This one was, which consumes more labor or time? And the comparison you're watching here is a movable pen versus a day range pen. And remember, the movable pen, the chickens are contained. They are in an enclosure. You just move the pen and the chickens as well. So they never come out. They're not free to come out and roam. In the day range pen, you have the structure they roost in or they spend the night in, but they can come out. You open the door in the morning, they come out, and in the evening they come back, and you are the one to close the door at night. So the comparison here was all this. By now you've gone through it, I know. All these activities you do, and if you wanna, you probably want to ask me why 35 days. Why are they talking of 35 days? Just because these chickens have been moved from a brooder after mostly 3 weeks. So they're on their 4th week, and then they'll have to spend another 7 weeks out on the pasture. That's why the 35 days comes in here, because the study was done outdoors. And I don't know if you have also scanned through this, and I won't read all of this. The difference per batch of 50 chickens, I think it was 50 chickens here, was 52 minutes, whether you're doing it in an enclosure, the movable pen, or in a day range pen. So it's an hour difference, not that much of a difference. So you can use, when it comes to labor and time, either or will be about the same. And if you have any questions about that, we can talk about it later. And then the next question was, what is the profit between movable pen and day range pen? And so this study was between, well, 4 pairs of chickens. See, like you can see right there, that's one pair, and another pair, third pair, and fourth pair. And these chickens came out at 3 weeks, so they were to spend another so many days. And you can see for the different groups, this one spent less time compared to this group here. Okay, and they were taken to completion, and the average live weight was weighed, and then the dressed weight for each of the groups. And what you see is there was better yield in the movable pens, movable pen 1 and movable pen number 3. Okay, now interesting, well, research is always interesting. You come out with funny, sometimes very funny results. In movable pen number 2, there was no significant difference between those in the movable pen and those in the day range. Again, that was unexplainable. In the fourth one, the day range chickens performed better than the ones in a movable pen. Now, that was attributed to management, and we'll be talking about management in another section, because this was in a cooler place, and the author, Kate Glass, tends to think that because of the coldness, the chickens in the movable pen did not perform as well as those in the day range pen. Okay, and I'll leave it at that point. So this is a kind of a study that needs to be repeated maybe twice over, so that there's a total of 3 studies that can come up with a more conclusive result. So I'll leave it at that. Then also, as you continue to prepare, you need to develop a budget. What will you need? By reading, you'll know what you need. You'll need all these things that are listed here. And for each item, assign a dollar value. Maybe by talking to other people, they'll let you know what, I have something that I can sell you for cheaper than it would otherwise cost. And if you can get some cost-cutting strategies, utilize them. Always good to do that. And this, I'm sure you already know what I'm talking about. But then the other question is, which poultry breed should I be utilizing? And I just went into the literature and found a few breeds that I'm going to share with you. By no means, it's not an exhaustive list. You can do that yourself, or you can make contact with us and we can talk about it. There are quite a number of poultry breeds out there to choose with. But before I get to any of those breeds, I want to show you what Joe Salatin says, because he's been asked, what's your most popular breed? And his answer is given right there, all those points. He wants an aggressive forager. He doesn't want a wimp or one of those breeds that just go out there to hang around and they're not foraging as much as they could. What's the benefit of foraging aggressively? It saves you on feed that you'd otherwise provide, because you have to provide them with feed anyway, and we are going to talk about that in a second. So the more of an aggressive forager it is, the more you save on the feed. And then he wants a kind of a breed that will peck in the ground 2-3 times and then check the heavens, check the clouds and see who is coming. because she or he is likelier to escape the hawks and the eagles better than one that just doesn't check who is around. And then, good luck with this. He wants one that never goes sick, never ever goes sick. Now, his argument is with his flock, any of those chicks, by the way, he's organic, he doesn't use any antibiotics. So any one of the chicks that fall ill and die is not fit for the environment, for it's not in equilibrium with its environment. So good riddance, let me keep those who are strong. And I think with time, he's been able to do that and utilize non-chemical or non-chemical antibiotics. I do think he uses vinegar, but his mortalities can sometimes be high. Nothing wrong with that. He says those that are weak need to go. And then he wants one that will get big enough to make a stew, and he doesn't say how much time. If it takes 12 weeks, that's fine. If it takes 7 weeks or 8 weeks, that's fine too, at some point. So again, I do know that you know that hens do not lay 365 eggs per year. They are all over. I mean, it's never 365 eggs per year because it takes 25 hours for an egg to fully develop, plus or minus a few minutes. So at some point, a hen will miss a day here and there. So you will not get 30, 31 eggs every month. You probably get 27 at best, something like that. So, and he doesn't mind. If it's 220, it's fine. For him, it's fine because he wants birds that have been allowed to be chickens. He doesn't want, we'll talk about that in a little while. And then he wants one that is heirloom, purebred, that has not been messed around with the breeding and all that. So keep that in mind. And let's look at a few breeds. But even as you choose breeds, you also have to decide, do you want one that is for meat only? Do you want to produce for meat only? Or do you want a layer only? Or do you want a dual purpose? Each one of those has advantages, and also it is satisfying your goal, whatever your goal is. So the breeds of layers that I'm going to share with you here, we'll start with Orpington. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Orpington, something like that, from Chile. That will lay blue-shelled eggs, and it has those other characteristics. If you notice from the picture here, it's got those tufts around it's like ear tufts or whatever. And they don't even bother to tell you how many eggs it lays in a year because maybe that's not of importance. If it is laying yellow eggs or blue-shelled eggs, they are needed for Easter eggs. So it's not really for food, it's for that purpose. But in America, when it was brought in here, it was crossed with some local birds, and you came up with Americana. I just don't know how to pronounce this, but that's what you're seeing bottom right there. And she lays 250 eggs per year. The only issue with her is that she's broody. She always wants to sit on the eggs. She wants to sit in the nest. She wants to really produce young. So you have an issue with that. You have to keep removing her from the nest and from sitting on the eggs. And then the black Australorp, which you can guess that it is from Australia, just from the word there, is dual purpose. It's a very good hen, actually. I've seen one of my friends, he keeps them and they are awesome. And you can see it lays quite a bit of eggs, and after some time, you can also decide to sell it for meat. It'll still be good. It's a very hardy chicken. Hardy meaning it will survive winters better, and if you allow it to free range, it will survive well there, foraging out there. Then we look at some other layers. Bath Orpington from England, poor layers, 190 eggs per year. But because they are dual purpose, you can capture that other element of the advantage, despite the fact that they're only laying 190 eggs per year. And then you have the red sex-linked. They are so called because the color of the chick is linked to the gender of the chicken. So breeders like this because they have an easy time determining whether it's a male or a female. But look at how many eggs it's laying in a year. This is a super layer, and also you can get some blue-green eggs as well. So that's a good one to think about. More layer breeds that you might actually be aware of. The Rhode Island Red is very popular. It's a great forager. That's a good thing to think about if you're thinking about pastured poultry. And then it's bred for the northeast. Well, no wonder it's from Rhode Island. It's bred for those areas where it gets really cold. So they are great survivors when it comes to the cold temperatures. I've seen quite a number of people doing the bird Plymouth Rock. Again, good layers, excellent foragers, and both of these chickens are pretty calm. You can walk up to it and pick it up. Let's go to the meat eggs now, to the meat chickens now, sorry. And the most popular one is the Cornish by Rock Cross. And I'll just call it Cornish Rock Cross from now onwards. And this picture here, or this slide, is just showing you the white rock being crossed with the Cornish chicken and producing the Cornish cross. Why is it the most popular? It's shown on this other slide. It's extremely fast growing. It's really a favorite of the large scale operations and those people that want to make a lot of money because it's quick growing. It's out of your operation very quick. And because it's quick growing and develops a big body, it's actually, it has consequences. It's too heavy. It's not able to forage as well. Remember that to forage means scratching the ground sometimes. It cannot support itself on one leg and scratch with the other. It's unstable. And you can see from the gait here that the distance between the two legs is wider than in most other chickens just because it needs to support this huge body, which is, as they said there, double-breasted. They have very few feathers, so they are very sensitive to heat. That's shown right there. And because the meat is growing so fast or developing so fast, it's at the expense of internal organs. So if you see one dropping dead from a heart attack, don't be surprised. People who overfeed them, I've seen people overfeeding them, and actually it's unable to stand like that. It sits on the entire leg, so it's just too heavy. It has insatiable appetite, but it's very easy to process. The feathers are easy to pluck and to clean. Is really an easy job, and you get good money for it. But it has not developed as well as others when it comes to quality of meat, and we'll talk about that in a second. The Morays K22 came from Italy. Keep this chicken breed in mind because I'll be referring to it quite a bit in a little while. It has heritage type gourmet flavor, and I think that's why the Italian chefs love it. So it's good for niche markets. It is slower growing. Therefore, if you decide to grow this chicken, be prepared to wait 11, 12, 13, 14 weeks for it to get to market weight. But it is tasty. It has unique flavors that allow it to be a favorite of some of these chefs and some people. I love this particular one, the Silver Cross. Particularly because of its taste and meat quality. I love that. And then also for growers, anybody who wants to raise them, if you can get 5 pounds in 9 to 10 weeks for a rooster, that's pretty good. And so if you are aiming for the ethnic markets and include me in there, I will be very happy to get you chicken, to get your roosters if you raise these ones. They are pretty, I love them. I like them. More meat breeds and the Rangers. This one was developed in France, and you know, anything between 6 and 8 pounds in 80 days. But what I wanted you to note here is the 70% live to dress weight yield. 70% of the carcass, the processed, the dressed chicken will be your final product, meaning you only lost 30% to feathers and feet and offal and stuff like that. Okay, right? It's an excellent forager, and it's actually one of the popular alternatives to the Cornish and raw cross. Sure, you take a few more days to get it to maturity compared to the Cornish raw cross, but if people want a bit more red meat, higher quality meat, and stuff like that, you better be going for the Freedom Ranger. The Wyandotte. It's a people that are Native Americans here in the U.S., and I think that's where the chicken was developed for them, or they owned the chicken. I cannot remember very well what that is. It has a productivity of 200 eggs per year, but notice that they are large. They are huge eggs. It's a good forager, and it's a very docile chicken. Another good one to keep. And I do not know how long it takes to get to slaughter weight or processing weight. I should have checked that. All right, and then I don't know, the Red Rangers and the Freedom Rangers have some. It's a variant of the Freedom. The Rangers are about the same, if you can see that in here. And I think this is a repeat of just what I said. I shouldn't have included this slide here. But in this slide, I did include a comparison of the Freedom Ranger or the Red Rangers. You can see my pointer there. This is the one compared to a Cornish cross or Cornish by raw cross at 4 weeks. And you can see that the Cornish cross is almost twice as big as this other guy. So he is developing faster. And I should have said they were bred primarily for meat production and nothing else. That was a major target when they bred them. And I have put up something here, this table here that compares those two types of birds. The Red Rangers, which I talked a bit about a while ago, they are more natural looking when they are grown up, as you can see down here. They are sleek, they're slender, and they are also more natural behaving because, hey, you want them to be great foragers and looking for bugs and scratching the ground and taking a bath in the dust, things like those. They have moderate growth rate, as I said, take longer, and you can see that in the table there. They are aggressive foragers. They are fully feathered, and therefore they are not as easy to pluck or to clean as is the Cornish cross. But they are also adapted to the environments that they are in. They can tolerate the cold. They can tolerate the heat. Their slow development is partially attributed to their high activity. High activity obviously will mean that they are consuming more of energy, running around, scratching, and doing stuff like that. But the take-home message here is, if you want lots of white meat raised in a small space, then go for the Cornish by raw cross breed. But if you want a more natural broiler with a high forage diet, with all those goodnesses of the omega-3 fatty acids, and raised in ample space, because you want to give them freedom to forage, then do the Red Ranger. That's the message from this particular slide. Right. We continue. Somebody else called Kim Cassano did a study or gave us some tips by which to choose a meat breed. And remember what Joe Salatin said, he wants all these things. So Kim came along and studied 6 breeds. He looked at Kim looked at those breeds at their growth rate, feed consumption, the carcass yield, the mortality rate, activity level, and overall profitability potential. And the guidelines are given in the next few slides. What she did was to have them raised on movable pen, and I think that's what she called a free range, versus the day range where the chickens could roam around. So I will not say so much because she didn't do a very good job of explaining her results. But at least in this particular slide, if you look at the blue column here, in both the free range, which I consider to be the movable pen, and in the day range, where they have freedom to roam during the day, the Cornish cross ate the least amount of feed overall to make the 4.1 pound weight. I don't know if you can see right there. Let me get a different pointer. See right there, that's 15 pounds, or rather 12 and a half pounds to make 4 pounds, 4.1 pounds. Compare that with this guy right here, who is the yellow one, the green one, K22, the Moya, remember the one we talked about, which is slow growing. It ate 25 pounds of feed to make 4.1 pounds of live weight. Now, that should not be a discouragement to anyone that wants to grow it for the Italian chefs, who will pay you all that you've put into your operation and get back your money. So if your buyer wants those, why go for them? Because then you'll be agreeing with them that it will take longer for you to produce them. But yeah, this shows the different amounts of feed that different breeds will consume to get you to slaughter weight. And you can now tell again why the Cornish cross is one of the popular ones. Then she looked at the cost to grow 1 pound. And the cost to grow 1 pound means how much feed did you feed a group of birds, and then you divide that by 4.1 pounds because you want to know how much it costs to get to that 4.1 pounds we talked about in the last slide, and then you multiply by the cost of feed per pound. So I think I calculated like 50-pound bag costing, say, $10. Let's assume you get that. So it should be what? And you do the math. You multiply by that, and you can then again see that the Cornish cross consumed or spent $1.28, which is less than $1.50, $1.25, I say, to get to 4.1 pounds in the free range. But when it came to the day range, it was closer to $1.50. On the other hand, the K22, the Moya, almost consumed twice as much in the free range and almost 1.5 times in the day range compared to the Cornish cross. So again, jives well with that. And I'm not referring to the Salatin data there. I'm just going with free range and day range, but Kim did get some data from Salatin, and she was using that to compare Salatin's operation versus the ones she was observing. But I'm not referring to them here to keep things simple, and even for me, this is complicated. All right. And then she also looked at mortality rates, and for production of chickens, any mortality is unacceptable. If you have 100 chickens and you approach 5% mortality, so 5 of them die, you should be asking yourself questions. You should be troubleshooting what's going on. If it gets to 10%, which is some people say is acceptable, you should be a very worried person, because at that point you're losing too much. But you look at Salatin's model here, and I will refer to it here, and he does not use antibiotics. He uses other things that are omri acceptable. He does pretty well maintain his losses to about the 5% range, which is not bad. Now, with what Kim was standing on free range and day range and using antibiotics, the silver cross and the Red Rangers and the Super Dixie, which are like Red Rangers, these are both like Red Rangers, held pretty good, especially on the free range. So other than that, everything else went above the 5%, which would worry me a whole lot. Okay. Remember that we are talking about 3-week-old chickens that have been started on the pasture. How many days did it take, again, for these chickens to reach the 4.1 pound breast weight? And again, you see my notes over here. For the Cornish rock, it took 51 days in this particular free range observation, and in another one, 53, so no significant difference here. Meanwhile, you compare that with the K22, the Moya, almost twice as much time to get to the 4.1 pound level compared to the Cornish rock. So it takes much longer. We said it's slower growing, so this confirms the finding that the K22s are slower growing, and everybody else is all over the place, and you can see those numbers. But generally, there was no difference in performance between the two systems here, as you can see, between the two systems, free range and day range. And then she took on a study that was kind of interesting, which doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense. She made observations on a daily, I don't know how often, but she made observations about how much time were chickens spending around the feeder. Remember that these are in cages, they are in movable pens, but she still wanted to know how much time is being spent around or at the feeder. And then who tried to forage? You know, they're in pens, but in those pens they can forage, they're in pasture. So who was trying to forage more? And then who was kind of sitting down to rest? What surprises me here is that the Cornish rock was not resting as much as I thought it would rest. If anything, the Freedom Ranger, which is one of those that is supposedly very good at foraging, actually foraged less, as you can see there, and rested more, as you can see up here. Compared to the Cornish rock, you'd have thought it would have been the other way around. So she did, or the author did say that it was difficult to follow these activities of these birds out there on pasture. So this is a study that is difficult to perform, but I thought I would throw it in there and just show you, you know, like impress on you the difficulties of doing these studies. Look at K22. the one that is slow growing. It's supposedly a great forager, which it is, and it doesn't rest as much. Okay. Well, despite the fact that your birds are out on pasture, remember that they are not getting all their nutritive requirements out on the pasture itself. Research has shown that you can end up getting up to 10 to 15% of the feed for these birds out on pasture. Somebody has said up to 30%, but that's on the high side. 10 to 15%. You still have to give them feed. And this is a general guidance here. When you start both the layers or the broilers, you have to give high crude protein feed. That's what that is. And then end up giving less crude protein. Young, actively growing animals, even humans, we need more protein to build up muscle, and then reduce that as time goes. If anything, if you continue feeding very high protein, it gets thrown out by the body. It knows how much it needs. The rest comes out in urine. However, the broilers, as you can see here, you maintain higher quality of feed because you want them to build the muscle. That's what it is. The next question that people ask is, how much does a chicken eat? And I would urge you to read Jacob's paper. And from right here, you can see that at week 1, I estimate that these tiny little birds are eating a quarter ounce, or an ounce for that matter. Anything from a quarter ounce to an ounce. Second week, maybe 2 ounces. Maybe third week, 3 ounces. Fourth week, a quarter pound is 4 ounces, and continues like that. And adult birds will usually eat a half pound per day for this amount that is for the ration that is shown down here. If that's how much it eats, how often should? Oh, yeah, I think another slide will come in later. What should be on pasture? And the other question is, what kind of pasture should I offer my chickens? Is it new or is it old? That would be the question I would ask. Plus, does it have plenty of broad-leaved foliage? Legumes or broad-leaved plants are preferred to the narrow-leaved grasses. Okay, so old pasture can be used as is, or you can renovate it and add new forages. You do a new pasture, ensure there is diversity, and this recommendation is from Joe Salatin. Put all these types of plants in there. Meanwhile, consider what kind of environment you are in, the soil characteristics, and then keep the grass short. This is no good, what you are seeing right here, because she is not finding the insects as easy as she would if this was kept shorter. Housing, and I'm rushing now, housing, the basics now, dependent very much on, first of all, your budget. You want to have expensive ones or easy ones? What kind of birds are you keeping? And then if you have level ground, any position would be good, but try to orient the open side of the coop towards the sun, so the south-facing side. And here you have some guidelines on the kinds of spaces you need. This is for day rangers. You see this mobile housing here that you can move around. One thing about this is that you don't move them often, so the grass underneath gets to suffer. And then on the other hand, the fertility of that particular portion is not as good as on movable pens, because chickens fertilize the only portion that is in the movable area. They're also called chicken tractors. Somebody called Andy Lee popularized the movable pens and called them chicken tractors. And here's a summary of the various types of houses that one can think about and the cost. And I won't go through all of them. This particular one here is fixed, but the chickens are free to roam out and come back. This is a hoop. A hoop is, you can leave it uncovered, or when you want it covered, you can do that. This is what originally Joe Salatin came up with as a movable pen. Half of it is completely covered. So when the weather is not great, the chickens can move in there. And that's why you need to provide lots of space so that the chickens have space to move. And you can almost guess that this is a white Cornish rock, where the Cornish rock type that is in there resting. Okay. I thought I would throw this in there. People raise turkeys as well in pasture, but they are a bit more challenging. First of all, the chicks are not as hardy as other types of poultry. They die very easily. They're also stupid. If one chick does like jump into a bucket, everybody else wants to jump in there. They are not easy to bring up. Then they require lots of room. They are bigger. Then are you actually aiming to have them for Thanksgiving market? Then do a planning of 5 months before that time of the year. And they are great converters of feed. So for every pound of feed, you get more meat than any other type of bird. So there's some good things about them. You must have fencing. You have no choice with these free-range birds. You must have fencing, and electric is better. Keeps what you want to keep inside in, keeps what you want to keep outside outside. That's it. And you have all these companies you can consult for the various types of fences, or those fences, and you can use portable power source like the solar power. A friend of mine uses home electricity. With that, you never have to worry about there's no power, or they are short-circuiting, or there was no sun, so maybe the charging is not as good. Great source of power. You will have issues with predators. There's no question about it. Do you have housing that is lockable at night, which is in the next slide? Is it available when it is needed by the animals to hide into or to keep away the predators? Diseases are not as many on pasture as indoors, but you need to keep checking all those amenities that they need on the pasture. Predator protection, have companion animals. You have companion animals. A friend of mine kept a mule with the chickens. They got along just fine. Other people do introduce the dogs, or even sheep and goats or alpacas. Just have them in there, all right? Or have a secure coop, like I said in the last slide. Remove vegetative cover close to the pasture. That way you discourage any critters that may want to come close to your chickens. Walk your animals every morning. Just like your children, when they wake up, you check if they're doing fine. The same thing with chickens. If you get into your coop or in your enclosure and find that some chickens are dead, and you see any of these signs or conditions, you can suspect. If you don't find eggs, if you find your eggs are missing, the one with no evidence, the snakes may be the issue. If you find that your birds are dead and not eaten, weasels are terrible when it comes to that kind of thing. They just kill for the heck of killing. Drink a little blood here, take a little blood over there, instead of just eating one. So walk your animals. If there's any reason for culling, it's listed here. Sometimes various things are off color. The comb and water may be off color. Maybe that's an animal that needs to go. If you check your bird and the abdomen is shallow and not tough and tight, maybe it's suffering from something. Time to cull that, remove that. You have to walk your birds. Some economics, Joe Salatin says that 10,000 birds, which he does raise, on 20 acres in a period of 6 months nets him $25,000. He doesn't say, I didn't get to see well, you're supposed to buy this book. It's supposed to guide you, and it's supposed to tell you how much went into the operation, how much did he invest to get the 25,000. But he says that's possible. And so another study, running over time here, another study was conducted by Das Gupta and her colleagues in the University of Kentucky, particularly for extension people. What do we tell people when they say, what should I be expecting of performance of broilers? And so she did a study where she just asked several farmers to give her data on their poultry production. Okay, and so there were 3 weeks that got introduced in the pasture at 4 to 5 weeks, and they sent weekly records of weights of these birds, which were fed, and they were supposed to be fed according to Jacob's recommendation. Remember Jacob's a while ago. And what you're seeing, all the blue dots here, all these blue dots that you see all over, were reports by various farmers. And so all the farmers reported different weights, as you can tell. Let's say at 50 days, if you look over here, there were some farmers whose chickens were still less than 4 pounds, whereas others already had attained 8 pounds, or somebody had attained 8 pounds. That's quite a lot of variability. Now, Jacobs himself had shown or has done studies that have shown how the birds should be performing. This particular profile right there. If your birds are performing like that, then you're doing okay, the red line. The line of best fit here was the green one, going with the data from the farmers, from these people that were raising chickens. So it closely followed Jacob's profile or trend. But as you can tell, some people are making a loss, while others were going to make a lot of money. And who knows, the guy with the 8 pounds at 50 days may have been overfeeding the Cornish rock chickens, which is what was being used here. So next, Das Gupta and her friends took on 4 farmers, and this time they told them, they gave them the chickens, the feed methods and all that, and said, we want you to send us our data. And so the blue farmer there was farm number 1, the farmer 2 is the red, and farmer 3 is green, and farm 4 is purple. And you can see this was disastrous with farm number 4, because never attained 3 pounds in about 55 days. Whereas in 55 days, everybody else was above the 4 pound level. Somebody was at 6.5 pounds. This was a management issue. They did, Das Gupta and her friends did find out that feeding was not as supposedly supposed to have been done, was less than optimal, and then moving the pens was not done daily as required. So management is a big deal. That's the point being made here. You're keeping records. We always ask people to keep records. Choose whichever method you want to do it. You can have pen and paper. The Amish do a good job. Computers now provide all these Excel and other programs that you can use. Costs. I won't belabor this, but according to them, Das Gupta and her group, they did say with $1,274, you can end up getting your capital costs taken care of. That was 2016, 2 years ago, so maybe 1,500 now. Notice that the pickup truck down here cost 20,000, but they only counted that for the first year, it was only contributing 0.01% of the total cost, which is now $200. So all other things here are familiar with you. And then the operational costs are given here, operating costs. And again, they show that, and I don't have much time to do the summary, if you do 5 batches of 100 chicks per batch, with an overall rate, remember that there is mortality, then you will be able to sell your birds at $9.54 to break even. In other words, don't spend more than $10 per bird. And yes, if you want to make for a 7-pound bird raised for 8 weeks and you want to do 30% to get 30% profit, you can sell that at $15 to $16. Have I paid $16 for a bird locally here? Yes, I have. So I can see that being a realistic figure. Be a good environmental steward, recycle what can be recycled. We all know about being social and environmental and economic, profitable, and all those things. And in closing, I would like to say that pastured poultry is a great thing to do for anyone. Requires some level of management, commitment, and doing what is right. Can be marginally to reasonably profitable. This is the conclusion by the Das Gupta group here. If you do it right, yeah, you make some money. If you don't, if it's a hobby type thing, you just probably be breaking even or just getting the satisfaction of raising food that you like for your own self. Can bring extra income? Yes. This one, at least they are in agreement that if you now go and sell in the farmer's market, process them, you can get your money back and you can get your money back and make a profit. And lastly, the pastured poultry allows you to let a chicken be a chicken. And then I had other resources here to recommend, the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association and other resources.
Sorry.
Yeah. I went over. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, James.
That's a lot.
Thank you, James, for your presentation today, sharing your knowledge about pastured poultry. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you got some information that'll help you with your small farm's endeavor. Please look for an email from us later today with an archived webinar of this presentation on the Illinois Local Foods YouTube channel. We'll also be sending out a new version of the PDF that is printable. That was something that someone caught, and I've since corrected that. And so that'll be coming out to you later today. And there was a question of James about.
Okay, let me get them. I've already got the first one. If Teacup Farm, if you can write to me, this is my email. I'll seek out those photos and I'll get them to you. I'll email them to you.
Okay, so, great. Thank you. Thank you.
And then if the rooster is, is there a difference in marketing meat of rooster versus hen? I do not know, but let me tell you this. When we hear, so people from Africa, when we hear there are some roosters for sale, we run like crazy. We don't even wait for a second chance. However, when it comes to selling the hens, if you have them ready and you want to get rid of them and get into market maker and say you have chickens that or hens that you want to sell, somebody should get back with you. I believe that somebody should get back with you. Now, some of these hens get tougher with age compared to others, but you remember some of those breeds actually retain their good meat qualities despite the fact that they are laying eggs. So again, if your buyer knows what it is you are selling, they'll probably run to come and buy them. So, and I don't have a better answer than that. Right. You can say something, you can pitch in, Doug.
Right. I was going to say that, yes, the whole idea is that the younger meat is usually tastier than old meat because our older hens or roosters, this is kind of your stewing type meat, your long, slow cooking type of meat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
And someone, Teacup also mentioned that they haven't seen the K22 or Silver Cross birds around. So maybe you can send her them that information about the photos as well,
Okay,
if there's a source. Or
please email me, and I'll get. If if you want to know where to buy them, I'll check that out.
okay. And lastly, and this is the fun one.
Okay. Yeah, pitch in here as well, but processing regulations when it comes to if you want to sell birds on your farm, this is Illinois, I think you're allowed to do up to 5,000, but you sell them on the farm. You can take them out to go and sell them out.
No,
I
they,
think and if somebody else is on there, Steve, I don't know if you're still there, you can pitch in here. But go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say exactly right. They have to be sold off the farm. They cannot be taken anywhere else. Eggs, that is different. Eggs can be sold other places, but you have to get an egg selling license from the state, which is a real easy process to do. Illinois Department of Agriculture.
That's correct. That's correct.
I think that
Okay.
I think that's it, James.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. And next week, stay tuned for Chris Endroth. He's going to be talking about ginger, turmeric, and some of the other interesting things that we didn't realize we could grow here in Illinois. So thanks again, and the links will be coming to you later today or first thing tomorrow morning. Thanks so much.